evening. Good evening. Thank you for joining us. Please remember to mute your devices. I'm Edwina Sessions, a member of the Burlington County Branch and the Director of Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion for the American Association of University Women, New Jersey. Our AAUW New Jersey State President is Sharon Suber, and she's busy hosting this evening, letting everyone in line. AAUW is dedicated to helping women and girls share and listen to others tell ways they have been able to push past the experiences of divisiveness, opposition, and the heaviness of biased targeting. This is a very pivotal time in our society, and biased, motivated behavior of hate, targeting people and groups based on who they are, is on the rise. Our goal for this presentation tonight is to not only hear stories of others, but for you to give thought to a story you may have facing hate bias behavior. And what did you do? And did you do enough? If you have questions or comments to share during this presentation, jot them down in the chat. If time permits, we will try to read some of them. This evening, we are fortunate to have in our presence our New Jersey Attorney General, Matthew J. Platkin, to give opening remarks. Attorney General Platkin is the 62nd Attorney General of New Jersey, and his top priority is protecting the rights and safety of New Jersey residents. He has been a champion for social justice and civil rights, combating racism and bigotry in all its forms. Attorney General Platkin, welcome to the American Association of University Women, and thank you for accepting our invitation.
Well, thank you, Edwina, and thank you for inviting me. It's really an honor to be with you all tonight. I'm sorry that I can't stay for the full program because looking at it, I think it's going to be a really rich discussion about an incredibly important topic. And I thank AAUW New Jersey for inviting me, but more importantly, for creating a space for these conversations at a time when there's not enough of this going on in our state and frankly across the country. You know, you just laid it out really well, Edwina. Unfortunately, we are living in a time of intense bias and hatred. And that's not unique to New Jersey, but it certainly hasn't escaped New Jersey either. And, you know, we are a state of 9.3 million people. We are one of the most diverse states in America, and we're the densest state in America. So we have diverse communities living in very close proximity to each other. And that's something that we should be proud of. That's why I love living here. That's why I'm proud to raise my kids here. But it also means, as the chief law enforcement officer, my primary responsibility is to keep the residents of this state safe. And so, yes, that means combating violent crime and gun violence. And I should note that we are at all-time lows of gun violence in the state of New Jersey. That's something we should be proud of. That's a result of the great work that we've done in this state, all-time lows. But if we just focus on crime statistics, we will miss our true mission of keeping the residents of this state safe, because being safe in New Jersey in 2024 also means, do you feel safe going about your daily lives, going to school, going to work, going to worship, who you love, regardless of who you are, how you identify, what language you speak, what country you're from, originally. None of that under our laws matters. Everybody has a right to be here, and our law couldn't be clearer. We have the oldest and strongest civil rights law in the country, the law against discrimination. And so in a time of intense bias and hatred, I believe the chief law enforcement officer's responsibility is to ensure that we're doing everything we can to make folks feel safe in and about their daily lives. And that's a tough time. That's a tough task right now because there are a lot of people in this state. And I don't need to tell you and the panelists that are going to be speaking tonight, I'm sure we'll go into this. There are a lot of people in the state who feel fearful or anxious or nervous about going about their lives simply because of who they are. And that bothers me. That bothers me as a resident of the state. It bothers me as a parent raising two kids in this state because the number one place, this is particularly relevant to this group, number one place now where a bias incident is reported is a school, an educational setting. 1 in 4 bias incidents reported in New Jersey occur in our schools. And so that bothers me as a parent, and it bothers me as the chief law enforcement officer. So what are we doing about it? Well, we've taken a multi-pronged approach to combating bias and hate. Well, just last week, we launched a new anti-bias campaign, No Hate in the Garden State. We can get you all the information about that. It's going to be a multi-pronged campaign, including using all forms of media, print media, television, radio, digital media, to get people information about how they can report bias incidents. And I'll touch on that more in a second. We're also using community partners to help educate folks about their rights and the way to report incidents before they arise to, God forbid, a violent incident. And that builds on work that we've done through our Division of Criminal Justice and our Division on Civil Rights, training thousands of people throughout the state, expanding our reporting platforms, allowing you to report online, report anonymously, report by phone, report to your local police department. The good thing about New Jersey is it does not matter how you report an incident. It all goes to the same place. And every morning, we have a team in my office that looks at every single complaint reported in the state of New Jersey from the day before. And we look at it to see if there's a criminal violation, something that rises to the level of a bias crime, meaning a crime that was committed for a biased purpose. If it doesn't reach that level, and sometimes it doesn't, or oftentimes it doesn't, maybe you don't know who the perpetrator is, maybe it doesn't reach that level of intent, which is a high burden, then we look at it from a civil rights perspective. Did it violate somebody's civil rights under state law, under our law against discrimination, under our State Civil Rights Act? And we have brought a number of cases based on complaints under our civil rights statutes. But it's important to know that even if an act is not actionable in the sense that we can't bring an enforcement action, whether it be a criminal or civil enforcement action, it still informs our response. Because you can go on our website and see every bias report that's coming into us. We put it on a portal. You can go in and track and see what's happening in your community. And we look at this data in real time to see, well, are we seeing problems in certain communities? Are we getting a few reports about anti-Semitic bias or anti-Black bias or anti-Latino bias or anti-Asian bias or anti-LGBTQ, you name it? Are we seeing that in a particular community? And if so, can we intervene before those bias incidents escalate to something even more serious? And so the point of the campaign, and frankly, the point of the outreach that I do and that our office does and the trainings that we do, is to get folks comfortable, particularly in communities where there's understandably hesitation to report information to law enforcement, to get them comfortable and trust us enough to know that we will take those complaints seriously, that we act on them, and that it doesn't just go into some black hole. Because it is almost never the case that when somebody commits a violent act, that's a biased act, that's their first time they ever engaged in biased activity. It almost always starts with something much smaller. Maybe it's a slur written on a playground, or an email that's sent, or a flyer that's leafleted. And it doesn't have to rise to the level of something that we can take an enforcement action on for us to see a problem and hopefully stop it from escalating. And I'll tell you, the thing that breaks my heart the most is when I do these conversations and I talk to folks and I hear, well, oh, we didn't think that issue that happened here was big enough to report to you. We didn't think anybody would care. We just thought that's normal, that's how things are. And there's nothing about this that's normal. If you're feeling uncomfortable in your community or folks that you live with and represent and work with are feeling uncomfortable because of who they are, then we want to know about it. Because without information from folks in the community, we will never be able to stop bias from escalating and becoming something that's potentially dangerous. But there's no question right now that people are afraid in this state. People are afraid in this country. And I think there's a lot of reasons for that. And, look, we filed a significant lawsuit this morning against TikTok. We've sued a number of social media companies. We know that bias and hate that exists in social media, where it often starts, does not stay on social media. It does not stay in a virtual landscape. It results in real people doing real things on the ground to other people. And we right now have too many people in positions of authority, celebrities, who have found it okay to give license to acts of bias and hate that would have been unimaginable in the mainstream just a few years ago. And so it is incumbent on all of us to push back against that bias and hate that we are seeing. It is incumbent on people in positions like mine and in our office to listen to the community and respond and do what we can, whether it be through mediation, through education and training, and yes, through holding people accountable when they violate our laws, so that they know that this is not tolerated in New Jersey, that we don't condone acts of bias and hate, that we don't accept that that's just a fact of life. As I said, this is arguably the most diverse state in America, and we should be proud of that. That should be something we celebrate. It should not be something that's weaponized against members of our community. And so, on behalf of the law enforcement community and as the chief law enforcement officer, I want you to know that that is absolutely our commitment to you all. And if there are ways that we can reach folks that you work with or in your communities that we're not currently reaching, we welcome any feedback we can do on that. I encourage you to go look at our website to see the new campaign that we launched, help us spread the word. Because what I do know, and I'll finish with this, is that there are more people in this state who don't engage in biased behavior than those who do. You hear the loud voices on social media, they spread, and you think it's everywhere. And it may feel like it's everywhere. But the vast majority of New Jerseyans love living here because of the diversity of our state, because of how rich it is. It's something that we celebrate. And we need to collectively work together to push back against the minority number of those voices that would try to tear us apart. And we're going through a time in this country and in our state where those voices are quite loud. And we've been through this in other periods in our history, and it's not a pretty time to be living through. But it makes it all the more incumbent on us to be taking action. And that's why I said, as the chief law enforcement officer, we have to take a broad view about what it means for people to be safe and to feel safe in the year 2024. So I thank you for having me. I'm so honored to be here. I'm really grateful that you're hosting this important conversation. And I'm here to help any way we can. Thank you so much, Edwina.
Thank you so much, Attorney General Placken, for spending this time with us. We can't thank you enough.
Thank you.
At this time, I would like to introduce to you our panel of women. I think one of our panelists is having a problem getting on. Is that still correct?
Yes. That's correct.
Okay. So we'll move on with the other two ladies. And if she comes in, could you let me know and I will introduce her, but I'll move on to the other two panelists. Okay? At this time, I would like to introduce you to our panel. Our topic tonight, fighting hate, telling our stories. The panelists will tell their stories during 3 rounds of questions that I will ask them as moderator. These women will discuss the issue of confronting hate from their own perspectives. I'm going to start with Elizabeth Rothman. Liz is the daughter of a Holocaust survivor from Poland. Her service to the Henry Rickless Holocaust Memorial Committee is very personal. Liz chairs that committee. Liz is a former teacher in the Paterson, New Jersey public schools, where she taught for 42 years. She resides in Monroe Township and is the mother of an adopted daughter from Paraguay. Liz is active with the AAUW Freehold Area Branch, where she also serves as co-president. In addition, Liz also serves as chairperson of adult education at the Monroe Township Jewish Center. Our next panelist, Minister Valerie Granberry. And everything that Valerie does, she puts prayer first. She was initially called in the ministry in 2003. She is now an ordained minister and is thankful for her gifts and abilities. While working at Burlington County College some time ago, Minister Valerie became inspired to write poetry. Since then, she has published her poetry writings in a few books. Minister Valerie is a mother and grandmother. She is a resident of Pemberton Township, Browns Mills, and a community faith leader. I'm going to start my first question to Liz Rothman. Liz, bias-motivated behavior often leads to violence against race and religion. When hate came to your community, what form did it take? And tell us about it.
Unmute.
Unmute.
Okay. Can you hear me now?
Can, yes.
Okay. I belong to Monroe Township Jewish Center. I've held many positions at my temple and currently serve as the chairperson of adult education. Last year was extremely difficult for us. After the October 7th attack on Israel, we were feeling vulnerable and our hearts were aching for our family and friends in Israel. And then, on November 9th, our temple was vandalized. Graffiti and offensive language were spray painted on the outside of our temple. The police found it in the early hours of the morning and reported it to our rabbi. It made the news. Later, we were one of many temples that received bomb threats. I felt violated and scared. How could the place where I worship in be desecrated this way? I have grown up in an America where I had personally felt no anti-Semitism, and now here it is right on my doorstep. I realize that in the scope of things, this vandalism was a small act of hatred compared to what my father experienced during the Holocaust. But I worry that this could be the beginning of much worse things to come. I have 2 step-granddaughters in college, and I am concerned about their safety in a land where anti-Semitism is growing, especially on our college campuses. One of my step-granddaughter's friends was beaten up at the University of Michigan just because he was Jewish. I was a teacher in the Paterson Public school system for 42 years. A colleague reported this blatant act of anti-Semitism to me. He was not Jewish, but he had a Jewish-sounding name. A vice principal was often harassing him, writing him up on things he did not do, and constantly giving him bad evaluations. The vice principal found out that my colleague was not Jewish and immediately apologized for giving him bad evaluations, saying, "I thought you were Jewish." My colleague reported him to central office and then demanded an immediate transfer, which he got. As far as he knew, the vice principal was never reprimanded for his act of anti-Semitism, which was pushed under the rug and covered up. My daughter, who is Latino and gay, has been the victim of hate many times. In school, she was bullied and harassed. She was called names like dyke, butch, and rug muncher. Once she was accused of smoking in the bathroom and was illegally searched. The next day, they caught the real culprits in the act, and they admitted to smoking the day before. I made the principal apologize to my daughter, but I should have done more. I believe she was the one accused because even though there were quite a few students in the hall at the time of the incidents, she was the only minority student, and she was the one they accused and searched. My daughter once received a speeding ticket in Marlborough Township, a predominantly white town. I went with her to court to show my support. I realized very quickly that I was one of very few Caucasians in the courtroom. This was a great example of racial profiling by the Marlborough police. The examples of hate that I have stated may sound small and insignificant, but they are not. Hate divides us, hate destroys us, and hate grows if we do not fight against it.
Thank you, Liz. Thank you so much for that. Minister Valerie, you grew up in Browns Mills, New Jersey. You faced some biased situations. How did you transition to a resting or better place?
Good evening, everyone. I did grow up in a time where low income, where welfare, where uneducated was looked down upon. And Edwina, prior to us coming on, it was something else I thought about. I didn't choose the family I would be born in. So being born into low income, into welfare, into uneducated wasn't my choice. But as I grew and as I got older, and as I knew all of the negative that was toward me, all of the negative that was against me, all of the negative that I experienced, even though it wasn't my choice to be born into it, it was my job to get myself out of it. Not as a young girl, but as an older girl. It was my job. And so, because I was born into that, and because I experienced people looking down on you, people looking at you, this is one of the biggest things. People look at you like you enjoy being in that situation. I didn't enjoy being in low income. I didn't enjoy being on welfare. I didn't enjoy being undereducated. I didn't enjoy that. And so one thing I knew, there was better. And it was my job to for me to do better. And that's exactly what I did. I remember I used to work full time and part time. I remember going to school, studying late at night, up late at night when the whole house was asleep. I remember knowing I wanted better. And so, one of the biggest things that I always tell people, you have to do what you want. And I always tell people it doesn't happen overnight, because for a long time, I remember coming home, no food. I remember going to school and never getting any support in school. I remember that. And I remember not getting any support at home. I remember that. And so I knew it was up to me to do better for me. And so that's what I did. It took a long time. I got off welfare. It took a long time. I got my GED. It took a long time. I got my associates. It took a long time. I got my bachelor's. It took a long time. I finally retired from the Department of Correction. All that took a long time. And so that's how I worked from what I was born into to what I wanted. And so thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Thank you, Minister Valerie, for that. Next question is for Liz. Liz, after the violence in your community, tell us how it left the community and how it leaves you feeling in your own way.
Hi, sorry. As the daughter of a Holocaust survivor, I feel that it is my mission to ensure that an event like that never happens again to anyone. Therefore, I must try to inform and educate as many people as possible about the rise of anti-Semitism. By the way, the year 2023 saw the highest number of anti-Semitic incidents ever recorded in our state of New Jersey, up by 103% since 2022. These incidents include harassment, vandalism, and physical assault. Unfortunately, many of these incidents occurred in our schools and on our college campuses. The Center for Digital Hate reports a huge increase in anti-Semitic posts online. They also state that the 5 major social media companies have taken almost no action to remove these posts from their platforms. For example, Jewish government officials in North Carolina are being targeted with anti-Semitic attacks in a misinformation blitz, hampering efforts to get critical information out to victims of Hurricane Helene. So what have I done to combat this hate? Well, I chair a committee that escorts Holocaust survivors to different venues all over the state. Every year I take them to Monroe Township High School to share their stories with the entire freshman class. After the presentation, the students are asked to write an essay about a Holocaust-related subject, such as what would you do or say if you came across a Holocaust denier? Or could something like the Holocaust ever happen again in the United States? My committee then selects 5 winners to receive awards. Later, the winners read their essays in front of the Board of Education and other venues. The students are also encouraged to share their experience of meeting a Holocaust survivor with their own family and friends. I have personally spoken to several organizations such as Indivisible about the rise of anti-Semitism in New Jersey. I cite statistics, retell incidents, and inform the audience about ways to report anti-Semitism to such places as campus hotlines and websites like the Anti-Defamation League. I urge people not to respond, share, repost, or engage with anti-Semitic rhetoric online, as that will only increase the likelihood that the horrific content will be reposted and shared. Lastly, I help organize the Yom HaShoah Remembrance Program in coordination with the Human Relations Council of Monroe Township. Last year, this event was attended by over 600 people, including town, county, and state officials. Holocaust survivors were honored and those who died were remembered. I delivered a speech about the state of anti-Semitism in America and what can be done to combat it. I participate in these and other activities because I believe that to stop the progression of hate, people have to see with their own eyes and hear with their own ears the destructiveness that hate can cause. Thank you.
Thank you, Liz. Thank you so much for sharing. Next question is for Minister Valerie. Minister Valerie, you talked to us about your dreams. Tell us a little more about how you overcame your past and the dreams that you have for yourself and for others.
Okay, thank you. Um, how I overcame, I gave a little bit of that in my previous question,
Thank you. Yes.
but I continue, like at this point, I will be 62 years old. And so I constantly continue to tell people, God is not done with us yet. And so if we're still here, there's things we can still do. And not only for ourselves, but I like what the Attorney General, Matthew Platten, I like what I was listening clearly. And he said, we do this for all of New Jersey. And so it's not only us that we're bettering ourselves for. And so some of the biggest things I do, I'll name two of those. And I answered the question previously, I got the education, I retired the Department of Corrections. I went back to work in the Department of Corrections as a chaplain. And so some of the big things I do is educate people. I educate people and I can let them know I'm educating you from experience, that it doesn't matter where you came from. It doesn't matter your zip code. It doesn't matter the color of your skin. It doesn't matter your income. You're able to do better. And I like to tell them it doesn't happen overnight. And I can tell them from my own personal experience. I remember going to the college, Burlington County College. I remember being up all night, putting my test through the scanner, and I failed. And I came home and I cried, but I went back again. And so that's what I try to put upon myself and to tell others, because I do a lot as a chaplain in the Department of Correction. I'm in contact with a lot of the inmates. They're called incarcerated persons now. And so I teach a lot. I'm a pastor in my church. I teach a lot that it doesn't matter where you come from, you have the ability to do better. So that's two of my biggest focuses and two of the biggest things that I do right now.
And to never give up.
Never,
Never
ever,
give up.
62, I still want to know what's next.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you so much for sharing. All right, Liz. Next question is yours. Tell us about your responsibilities at the Jewish Center to give a voice to the voiceless. Is she unmuted?
I'm probably not going to talk too much about what I do at the Jewish Center, but what I do all over. Okay. I feel that it is my duty and my responsibility to honor my father and all those who suffered and all those who died in the Holocaust. My father lost his entire family because Jewish people were hated, mainly because they prayed differently than most people. Hitler used propaganda and hate slogans to encourage people to think of Jews as less than human. He compared Jews to rats, making it easier for people to feel justified in killing them. My father told me stories of how he was bullied, tortured, beaten up, and even thrown out of school because he was Jewish. I am horrified with the anti-Jewish sentiment that I see around me, especially on our college campuses. American Jews are often blamed for things that they have no control over, and often things they don't even agree with. By contrast, I don't see Russian people in America being targeted because of the atrocities that Putin is committing in the Ukraine. History repeats itself, and I am afraid for my people. If I could just get one person to see how dangerous hating someone just because of their religion is, then I have done something wonderful. I would like to accomplish this goal through education, dialogue, and communication, which is why I am here today. Organizations such as the newly formed Center to Combat Anti-Semitism and reinforce multicultural acceptance in Middlesex and Monmouth counties can give everyone the tools to help fight this battle. We all must be taught to love and respect each other. After all, we are all human and should be treated as such.
Thank you so much for that. I'd ask you to say it again louder if I could. Thank you. Thank you, Liz. All right, Minister Valerie, the next and last question is for you. What is the best way to prepare yourself so that everyone begins to heal?
Best way to prepare yourself. What is the best way to prepare yourself so everyone begins to heal?
To heal.
One of my biggest things I say is you are accountable for you. We can't control how people act toward us, but we can control how we respond to them. And so one of my biggest thing is my belief. That's the number one. And then my second biggest thing is to educate ourselves, because education definitely is a key. So when we educate ourselves, I believe education, you're less likely to be targeted. Not that you're not going to be targeted, you're less likely to be targeted when you're educated. And so when we educate ourselves, that gives us our stability and how we respond to people that target us with hate. I really just want to say this. I was listening really clearly to Liz, and I just love how she's explaining her experience, because my accountant is Jewish, and he told me a story of how he was targeted against when he played basketball in school. And he said it was so much hate toward him because he was Jewish. They called him dirty, they called him stinking, they called him nasty. And now, as an adult, he said, I make sure I'm clean because of that target bias that was against me when I was in school. And so, as Liz is talking, it's making me think hate, people don't realize the side effects that come from that when you're targeted like that. And so, you have to really understand who you are, because I like to say you are accountable for you. You are accountable for getting the strength, the stability, the education, the support that you need to build you up. Because nobody, not nobody, but you are the main person that is accountable for your well-being. And so these things that hurt us and harm us, we have to be able to get those things off of us, out of our mind, out of our thoughts, out of our actions. And so I just want to close with something that I wrote to the inmates in our jail, because I give them an encouraging note every week to let us know you are accountable for you. You are accountable for you to have a peaceful sleep at night. You are accountable for you to have stability in your mind. You are accountable for your daily actions. And so how we deal with hate, how we respond to it, is what gives us that peaceful sleep, that rest at night, that assurance that I did not give hate because I got hate. And so this is what it says, their encouraging note. Hello, I noticed one day I see you and the next day you're gone. Another thing I noticed, you never leave you. You are always with you. So since you're always with you, how are you taking care of you? Are you taking care of your body, brushing, cleaning, grooming? Are you taking care of your mind, reading, studying, and learning positive material? Are you taking care of your emotions, staying in control, paying attention to what comes out of your mouth, listening more and talking less? Remember, you are always with you, and nobody will take care of you better than you.
Yeah,
So thank you so much.
yeah. Thank you for that. Thank you so much. You know, you've heard them tell their stories. I'm sorry that one of our panelists must have had an emergency tonight, but you've heard from two of our panelists. And telling our stories is not an end in itself, but it's an attempt to release ourselves from our story, to evolve and grow beyond them. You may have felt a connection of something that you heard tonight, and it may have enhanced your understanding of maybe yourself or maybe to understand others. Because understanding brings about change. I'm going to ask the two panelists to come back at this time and give a closing statement. I'll start with Liz.
Okay. Okay. Hate is not born, it's taught. As long as hate exists, tragedies and violence against others will occur. In the words of Martin Luther King, hate cannot drive out hate, only love can.
Thank you so much for that, Liz. And Minister Valerie.
I'm back again. I love Liz's response
I do too.
because that's the
Thank you.
same thing I always look at, and it's always said, the person that's biased or hates you, they're always in a worse condition than you because they're portraying that hate toward you. So how we respond to people is a major factor in how we heal and how they could possibly heal. Because we always hear hurting people hurt people. And so if they're hurting, how you respond to them is medicine for them, and it's peace and rest and tranquility. I mean, because we don't want to go to bed knowing I harmed someone else. And so how we respond to people is what helps them and what allows us to have rest also.
Thank you so much. Almost like forgiveness.
Yeah, you hurting people hurt people. So why retaliate the
Right.
way they're retaliating? Because one thing I say, Edwina, we always saw this in school, middle school, elementary school. The kids are rooting you on when there's two people that want to fight. The kids are rooting you on. Punch him, hit him, harm him, hurt him. But the teachers, the student that walks away and the student that turns their back and says, I don't want to do this, the adults are always saying, you did the right thing.
Mm-hmm.
And so I always give that example because we want to do the right thing, even if we're talked about, even if we're laughed at, even if people say, the weaker one. The bigger people, the stronger voices are the ones that say you did the right thing. And that's what we want to do.
Thank you so much. Thank you to Liz and to Minister Valerie for sharing their stories this evening. This would be a good time to read any questions that may be in the chat. I'm not sure if you had time to put any comments in the chat, but this would be a good time to read any if they are there. And Karen, I believe you said you would look in the chat and see if there are any comments.
Unmute.
There we go. Sorry about that. There are no comments or questions from our participants. We did get a follow-up in the chat from a member of Attorney General Platkin's staff with the link to the Attorney General's website, which the front banner is "No Hate in the Garden State."
Yeah.
So that link is there if you want to make note of it for later on. I don't see any questions coming in. If
Okay.
anybody has a comment or question, please type it in real quick. I don't think we're getting any comments tonight.
Okay. I just want to finish with, during the time remaining, before we close, we all have an obligation to be allies to victims of bias motivated behavior. I would be remiss if I did not mention allyship. Allyship is the practice of supporting and advocating for people who are part of a group that is treated unfairly or badly, even if you are not a member of that group. Speak up, speak out against it. In the chat, there's a question for everyone in the audience to take away. I'll read it to you, and please, please think about it. How would you become an active ally in fighting behaviors that lead to hate? How would you become an active ally? How would you become an active advocate in fighting behaviors that lead to hate? Let me give you some examples of how you would fight. Show support, number one, for victims by speaking up. Hate must be exposed. Educate yourself. Get accurate information about those who spew hate. Read, do research. Pressure our political leaders and community leaders to unite. Attend candidate forums. Ask questions. You want to make sure you're voting for people who have your interests at heart. Teach acceptance. Schools are an ideal place to teach against hate. What better place than the classroom? And dig deeper. Look inside yourself for biases and stereotypes. Don't just be a bystander. Speak out against hate to foster a more inclusive community. I thank everyone for coming tonight, especially the guest panel and especially the audience. And at this time, I'm going to turn the program over to our Vice President of Programs, Karen Barnes, for closure and any announcements. Karen.
Thanks, Edwina. I just want to echo the thank you to the panelists and to Edwina for conceiving this evening and putting it all together and being a wonderful moderator. I think the conversation and the listening has been really moving. So terrific. We're looking at offering a similar conversation in March focused on bias against women, since that's Women's History Month. And we'll be coming back to you with details. And I hope, Edwina, you're willing to step up and moderate again and be our host for the evening. And thanks everybody for attending. We'll come back in the next couple months with more details on the March program. Thanks so much to everyone.
I just have a few things to say in the remaining minutes. To the branch presidents and program chairs, I'd be happy to give suggestions or support to any of you having a DEI program in your branch you may want to have for your branch, or share with another branch. I'd be happy to be a part of that. Okay. With that said, good night, everyone. Thank you so much. And to my panel, I can't thank you enough. Good night.
Good night. Thank you.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Good night,
Edwina, you did a fabulous job.
Oh, thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you. We all did. We all did, even the audience. Great, 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 great subject.